The phone rang at 9:15 on a Tuesday night, 3 weeks after they placed Richard's urn on the mantel.
Mrs. Reeves, this is Frank Morrison from the funeral home. I need to talk to you about Richard's ashes, the urn you have. Those are not human remains. They're from our emergency batch.
Not human. Then whose ashes have I been mourning?
3 weeks earlier, Rebecca Reeves woke from routine surgery to an unfamiliar world. A nurse broke the news. Richard had died during the operation, on the same floor, just 2 floors above. She was sedated for 2 more days. When she surfaced, her son Joshua had already acted.
Mom, I took care of everything. The cremation is done. I didn't want you to wait.
Discharged and home, Rebecca found the urn on the mantel. Richard, reduced to a brass container, she touched the cold metal, mourning. But 3 weeks later, a call would reveal the ashes were not Richard's. In the first days after returning home, Rebecca barely left the living room, staring at the urn on the mantel.
He was there, and then he wasn't. And I never got to say goodbye.
Joshua came by the 3rd afternoon, his truck crunching gravel outside.
Mom, I know this is hard, but I did what I thought was best.
You didn't ask me, Joshua. You made a decision alone.
You were sedated, Mom. The hospital said it would be days. I didn't want you waiting for the body.
He says it was for me, but his eyes wouldn't meet mine.
She accepted his words, but a splinter of doubt lodged itself deep, too small to name yet.
Why does this urn feel lighter than it should?
She would not voice the question for 3 more weeks, but it sat with her in the quiet hours. The weeks passed slowly, each day marked by the same silence that had settled into the house like dust. She developed a routine: morning coffee near the mantel, then the garden, then the evening chair. But the unease grew. One afternoon, she lifted the urn to dust the mantel. It was lighter than she expected.
This doesn't feel like a man's remains. What half of him is missing?
She called Joshua. Not to accuse, just to ask about the cremation process.
Mom, it's all standard. I signed the forms. Don't worry about it. They use a communal process, Mom. The weight doesn't matter.
He's lying. But about what, exactly?
She decided to find the cremation certificate, to check the details herself. But the folder from the funeral home was missing from the drawer where she kept it. That Tuesday night, the phone on the side table lit up again with Frank Morrison's name.
Mrs. Reeves, I need to explain what happened at the funeral home while I was on medical leave. My assistant Derek released Richard's body for cremation 72 hours early, before the medical examiner's secondary review. The ashes you have are from our standard emergency batch. Richard's actual remains are still held by the medical examiner.
So my son handed me a stranger's ashes and told me it was his father. Why would Joshua rush the cremation? What did he not want found?
I can't answer that, but the blood work that flagged is why the medical examiner kept the body.
He mentioned something in the blood work that didn't belong there.
Blood work. Something was in Richard's blood that shouldn't have been.
She ended the call with a promise from Frank to send the records, then stood in the silence, the truth settling like a weight. Rebecca waited until morning to call Joshua, keeping her voice steady, and asked him to come over.
Frank Morrison called. He told me the ashes in that urn aren't your father.
Mom, that's a bureaucratic mix-up. I signed what the hospital gave me. It's all standard.
The body was released before the medical examiner's review. Why did you rush it?
I didn't rush anything. You are accusing me of something horrible. I was trying to help you.
His panic confirms it. He knows more than he's saying.
That afternoon, she called Frank and asked for the cremation paperwork. He sent scanned copies within an hour. She opened the file. The cremation authorization showed the release date was 72 hours early. The secondary review box was blank, and a date had been altered with white out. Joshua's signature pressed over the correction. She printed the pages. The evidence was clear. Someone had tampered, and her son's name was on every line. The next morning, Rebecca drove to Morrison & Son's funeral home, the printed records in her handbag.
Mrs. Reeves, I asked Derek to meet with us. He's the one who processed your son's paperwork.
Derek, a young man with a nervous twitch, sat behind the lobby desk and refused to meet their eyes.
Derek, why did you release Richard Reeves' body 72 hours early, before the medical examiner cleared it?
The son, Joshua, kept calling. He said his mother was too ill to wait, that it was cruel to delay.
I was sedated. I never asked him to rush anything. Did he offer you something to skip the review?
He said he'd cover any fees, that it was just a formality. I signed the form. I didn't think.
You released a body without authorization. The medical examiner now has a hold on it for blood work irregularities.
My son pressured a kid to make his father disappear before anyone could look too closely.
She left the funeral home with a sworn statement from Derek, a new piece of evidence proving intent back home. Rebecca sat with Derek's statement and stared at the phone. Frank had mentioned the medical examiner's hold. She dialed the county medical examiner's office and asked for Dr. Elena Harris.
Mrs. Reeves, your husband's case has been flagged. The toxicology showed something I need to discuss with you.
Tell me what you found, Dr. Harris. I am his wife. I have a right to know.
I need your written authorization to release the full report to you, but I can say it involves a substance not prescribed to him.
I'll sign whatever you need. Fax me the form now. I want to know what was in his blood.
I'll have the results overnighted to you once the authorization is processed. You'll have them by tomorrow afternoon.
Rebecca hung up, then called Frank to confirm the fax number. Within the hour, the authorization was signed and sent.
A sedative he never took. Who would give Richard sleeping pills?
She sat in the armchair and waited, the urn still on the mantel, but now the truth felt closer than ever. The next afternoon, a courier delivered a manila envelope marked confidential from the medical examiner's office. Rebecca tore it open and scanned the toxicology summary, her heart pounding.
Zolpidem. A sleep aid he never took. The level was high enough to interact with his blood thinners. Dr. Harris, this report says Richard had a sedative in his blood. He never took sleeping pills.
The concentration alone wasn't fatal, but with his blood thinners, it would raise the risk of a hemorrhagic stroke dramatically.
Someone gave my husband a drug that killed him. This wasn't an accident.
The clinical language faded as she understood. The stroke that killed Richard was likely caused by a drug interaction.
Can you prove who gave him the pills? Is there any way to trace it?
Not from toxicology alone, but the police can investigate if you file a report. This is evidence of possible criminal negligence.
I will find out who did this. I owe Richard the truth.
She remembered a dinner conversation from months earlier when Claire had mentioned her insomnia and boasted about a new prescription from her doctor.
Zolpidem. That's the drug Dr. Harris found in Richard's blood. Claire takes Zolpidem for sleep.
The next morning, Rebecca let herself into Joshua's house with the spare key she'd kept for emergencies. She went straight to the master bathroom. The medicine cabinet was slightly open.
There it sat, an orange bottle of Zolpidem, tartrate, prescribed to Claire Reeves.
She photographed the label with her phone, her hands trembling but resolute.
This is what killed him, and the woman my son married had it in her bathroom.
She locked the door behind her, leaving the house exactly as she found it. In the car, she stared at the photo, the evidence now tangible and damning.
Now she had to decide, confront them directly, or go to the police with what she had.
That evening, Rebecca sat at her kitchen table with the blood work report and the photo of Claire's prescription. She opened her laptop and searched for Zolpidem interactions with Coumadin.
Every article said the same. Combining a sleep aid with blood thinners increases the risk of cerebral hemorrhage.
She cross-referenced the dosage from the report with the strength on the bottle photo.
The level in his blood was exactly what you'd expect if someone gave him a full pill the morning of his stroke.
The picture sharpened. Claire had access, a motive to remove Richard as a financial obstacle, and Joshua had rushed the cremation to destroy evidence.
If I go to the police now, it becomes a criminal case. but I need to hear it from their mouths first.
She printed the relevant articles and added them to the folder with the cremation records, Derek's statement, and the blood work.
Tomorrow, I will sit them both down. No more hiding.
She closed the folder and looked at the urn. By this time tomorrow, she would know the full truth. The next morning, Rebecca waited in the living room until Joshua's truck pulled into the driveway. She stood as he walked through the door.
Sit down, Joshua. I have something to show you that can't wait.
She opened the folder and laid out the blood work, the altered cremation certificate, and the photo of Claire's prescription.
Where did you get that, Mom? You went into our house?
This sedative killed your father. Claire's name is on the bottle, and you rushed the cremation to hide it.
I didn't know it would kill him. Claire just gave him a pill to help him sleep. He asked for it. She was trying to be kind. Dad was anxious about your surgery. She just offered him one of her sleep aids.
He believes her story. He's covering for his wife, but he might also be telling the truth.
Please, Mom, don't destroy my family. It was a mistake.
Rebecca stared at her son, the folder between them. She hadn't yet spoken to Claire. The front door opened, and Claire stepped inside, her eyes scanning the room and landing on the open folder on the coffee table.
What's going on, Joshua? You said it was urgent.
Sit down, Claire. We need to discuss what happened the morning Richard died.
She picked up the photo of the prescription bottle and held it out for Claire to see.
Where did you get that? That's my private medication.
The medical examiner found this same drug in Richard's blood. It killed him.
I gave him a pill because he was anxious. That's all. I didn't know about any interaction.
Her story is too rehearsed. She's lying.
Mom, please. She's telling the truth. It was a terrible accident.
The room grew cold. Rebecca saw the fracture now, a line she would have to cross alone. After they left, Rebecca sat motionless in the armchair, the folder still open on the coffee table. She stood and crossed to the mantel, lifting Richard's photograph from beside the urn.
Richard, I need you to tell me, what would you do if our son was tangled in this? You'd want me to honor the truth, even if it shattered everything.
That afternoon, she drove to the cemetery, where Richard's name was already carved on the family stone.
I know you are not here. I know that urn is a lie, but I am going to bring you home properly. This will cost me Joshua, but living with a lie would cost me my soul.
She opened the folder once more, running her fingers over Derek's sworn statement and the blood work.
Tomorrow, I call the Elder Abuse Unit. No more waiting.
She looked once more at the urn, knowing it would soon be replaced by the truth. The next morning, Rebecca made the call she had dreaded for weeks. She dialed the county prosecutor's Elder Abuse Unit and asked for an immediate appointment. She arrived at the municipal building with the folder, her evidence sorted and indexed, ready to be presented.
Mrs. Reeves, these are grave allegations. Walk me through what you have.
My husband's blood work proves a fatal sedative interaction. My daughter-in-law's prescription matches the drug. The funeral home tampered with records and rushed the cremation.
The prosecutor examined the altered cremation certificate under the office lamp, the whiteout glaringly obvious.
This is enough to open a formal investigation. I'll need to send this to the district attorney.
It's done. The law is in motion now.
She signed a sworn statement, authorizing the release of all her evidence to the investigators.
Will this reach my son and his wife?
They'll be notified when charges are filed. I can't say more at this stage.
Over the following days, the investigation gathered speed. Frank Morrison handed over the funeral home's original logs, annotated and complete.
The log proves Derek acted under duress. Joshua's calls came in at all hours, demanding the release.
Derek's sworn statement, now notarized, detailed every call and the promise of extra payment to skip the review. A subpoena to the phone company revealed a pattern. Joshua had contacted the funeral home 4 times in the 48 hours before his father died.
He was planning it before Richard even died. The cremation wasn't a mercy. It was a cover-up.
Mrs. Reeves, the evidence is solid. We're preparing to file charges for reckless endangerment causing death.
Rebecca hung up the phone and steadied herself against the kitchen counter. The urn on the mantel seemed heavier now, the weight of the lie almost unbearable.
There's no turning back. Now, I've set the law against my own son.
The case was ready. All that remained was for the charges to be formally filed, and for Joshua and Claire to learn the truth. 2 days later, Joshua and Claire were formally questioned by the elder abuse investigators at the county building.
Mom, they're saying we could go to prison. Are you happy now? Is this what you wanted?
You broke into our home and stole my private medical information. We'll see how that plays in court.
By the end of the week, they had hired a criminal defense attorney and cut all contact with Rebecca.
He chose his wife. Just like he did the day he chose to cremate my husband without me.
The silence that followed was absolute. No calls, no texts, no visits. She woke each morning to the urn's cold presence on the mantel, the only proof she hadn't imagined it all.
I did what was right, but rightness doesn't fill an empty house.
The mantel became her confessional. She spoke to Richard's photograph every evening. The legal battle was only beginning, but the war inside her was already settled. On the first Thursday of the month, the county prosecutor filed the formal charges that changed everything. Claire Reeves was charged with reckless endangerment, causing the death of Richard Reeves, based on the blood work and tampered cremation records. The local paper ran a front-page article. Local woman charged in death of elderly man. Rebecca found the paper on her doorstep and read it slowly, her tea growing cold beside her.
They printed it. The whole town will know our family's shame, but they'll also know the truth.
A separate civil suit named Joshua as a co-defendant for funeral fraud and intentional infliction of emotional distress.
My son is a defendant now, but he made his choices.
She folded the paper and placed it beside the urn, a tangible record of the fight she had started.
I did what I promised you, Richard. Now the court will decide.
The trial was set for months later, but the truth was now public. The waiting began. 3 months after the charges were filed, the medical examiner's office finally released Richard's remains to Rebecca. She arranged a simple burial at the family plot, with a small gathering of old friends and Frank Morrison standing beside her. A minister spoke briefly, and then Rebecca stepped forward, a single white rose in her hand.
Richard, I brought you home. I am sorry it took so long. The urn on the mantel wasn't you. That lie is over now.
She placed the rose on the casket and stood back, tears slipping down her cheeks.
The real urn will sit on the mantel now. The fake one will find its own peace in the garden.
As the small crowd dispersed, she stayed behind, alone with the fresh earth and the final proof of the truth. Later that evening, she returned home and stood before the mantel, where the old urn still rested. She picked it up, feeling its lightness for the last time, and carried it to the garden. She knelt in the rosebed, the urn cold and light in her hands, the garden still in the early evening.
Whoever you were, I am sorry. I mistook you for my husband. You didn't ask to be part of this, but you gave me time to find the truth.
She tilted the urn. Gray ash cascaded onto the dark soil, disappearing into the flower bed.
Now you'll be part of something alive.
The last of the powder vanished into the earth. She set the empty brass container aside.
Richard is finally where he belongs, and so are you.
She brushed the soil from her hands and stood, the garden silent around her.
It's done.
The empty urn glinted in the low sun, a hollow shell now harmless. She carried it back toward the house. In the quiet weeks that followed, she often sat in the garden, where the false ashes had fallen, watching new shoots push through the soil.
I lost my son, but I gained the truth, and Richard's body is at peace.
She would touch the empty urn sometimes, still on the mantel, but it no longer held weight.
Justice isn't always clean. It cost me my family, but living a lie would have cost me my soul.
She didn't know if Joshua would ever speak to her again, but she had made peace with the silence.
I did what Richard would have wanted. I honored him.
The trial was still ahead, but it no longer consumed her. She would tend the garden, feel the sun, and let the legal process run its course.
I am not bitter. I am just free.
She looked toward the house, the empty urn waiting, and felt a quiet resolve settle in her bones. On a clear Sunday morning, Rebecca drove to the cemetery with a small bunch of forget-me-nots on the passenger seat. She knelt by the headstone where Richard's name was now flanked by a small, weather-beaten photograph.
I kept my promise, Richard. You are home.
She traced the letters of his name with her fingertip, the stone cool under the autumn sun.
The truth cost me everything, but it gave you back your dignity.
A breeze stirred the old oaks above her, and she closed her eyes, letting the sound of rustling leaves fill the silence.
I'll keep visiting until we're together again.
She stood slowly, brushing grass from her knees, and turned to go, leaving the flowers behind. At the cemetery gate, she looked back once more, then walked on. The flowers on the grave trembled in the breeze, and she drove home. Lighter than she'd felt in months, she returned home and went straight to the garden, where the afternoon light slanted golden through the trees. At the spot where the ashes had fallen, a cluster of white blooms had opened, delicate and surprising.
From a lie, the earth made something true. That's not a betrayal, it's grace.
She lowered herself onto the bench and let the warmth settle into her bones.
I can miss Richard without the weight of a secret pressing on my chest.
The memory of the ash falling did not fade, but it no longer haunted her.
I did what he would have wanted. That's enough.
The flowers did not ask whose ashes they fed on. They simply grew. Rebecca sat until the light dimmed, the garden holding her as it held the dust. The truth had cost her a son, but it had returned her husband's dignity, and, in the end, her own.